Chapter 101, Severe Cold and Visitors. The weather grew steadily colder. The water in the well was icy, almost at the point of freezing. Li Wei found himself almost wishing the water would freeze solid, anything to make the work easier. Even though the water hadn't frozen, the residents were nearly numb with cold. Passing the vegetable garden that day, he saw one of them shivering while harvesting corn. Work for a while, run to the bonfire to warm up, eat, then go back to the field. Many of them did the same. They had almost no warm clothing. This wasn't good. Li Wei was about to check the warehouse for supplies when the village representative, the old village chief, came up to him. He had the same concern, how to help the residents get through the winter. "My lord," the chief asked, "could we have some wool or leather to make warm clothes for the people?" "Approved," Li Wei said. There was already a large stock of both items in the public warehouse, enough to clothe 200 people. "Take what you need. Same rules as always. Don't be stingy, but don't waste either." "Understood, my lord." The old village chief hesitated over the words, then accepted permission to open the public chest. Having done many tasks for Li Wei and helped solve a great many practical problems, the chief's reputation had already reached the resident level, which allowed him access to the chest and its contents. From an outsider's perspective, it showed the Lord's trust and that the villagers' contributions had earned them the right to use communal resources. That prompt approval encouraged people to work faster. Normally, residents could use wool and thread for sewing, but production was too slow for the approaching winter, so Li Wei mass-synthesized a stack of identical warm garments. There were 3 inexpensive, effective materials for cold resistance: leather, wool, and warg fur. The last 2 hadn't originally been on the synthesis list, but had been added after encountering the corresponding items. With basic needs handled and supplies steadily increasing, and with reputation icons growing above the residents' heads, Li Wei felt it was time to plan for the next stages. At Reputation 50, a resident could become a practitioner, unlocking the ability to synthesize better tools and to choose a work block and take up a profession, actually learning to craft items. A tailor, for instance, could use a loom to work much more efficiently. In the game, a loom could only make banner patterns, but here it could serve its true purpose. Residents couldn't simply pick a career at random. They had to genuinely learn a craft first. This created a healthy growth path. Tourist to resident was the process of gaining residency. Resident to practitioner was learning a craft. After that, they could refine a specialty and advance to higher levels. Li Wei couldn't help but smile. The territory's development was flourishing. As things settled, residents provided for, resources growing, a visitor arrived, Gandalf. Not many days had passed since the two parted after seeing Bilbo home. Gandalf had returned and gone straight to Li Wei. He paused to look up at the newly built city gate, now clearly functional instead of merely decorative, and nodded. "Your gate finally isn't just for show," he said as he entered. "My intuition says something big has happened here." "It has," Li Wei replied. "I've recently taken in some residents, and I've established a faction." Gandalf glanced over the working villagers and approved. "These people likely have origins in Rovanian, the same stock as the folk of Rohan. That golden hair is a sure sign. They're brave and headstrong. In a crisis, even the women won't hesitate to take up arms. Their faces are good too, no evil among them." He fell silent for a moment as if remembering something, then exclaimed, "Wait, did you say you established a faction? Not just a new territory?" "Yes, including River Valley City. I'm calling all the territories the Free City States." Gandalf made a low sound of surprise. Lord of the Free City States, Li Wei. He smiled to himself. Having known Li Wei for some time, the wizard took the news in stride. If Li Wei wanted to found a new power, or to do something even more improbable, Gandalf wouldn't be shocked, though the idea of him conjuring a dragon still struck the wizard as absurd. "You've made this place lively and prosperous," Gandalf said. "I'm curious how you managed it." "It's complicated," Li Wei admitted, and, under the curious looks of a few residents, invited Gandalf into the castle for a talk. "What are your plans? Will you keep adventuring?" "Yes," Gandalf said seriously. "I'll be traveling. I suspect the great enemy's ring isn't simply gone to the sea. It may still exist somewhere. though it hasn't returned to its true master. Why do you think that? Liyue asked. Most of the White Council had accepted Saruman's view that the ring had been swept away by the river, and Gandalf often deferred to Saruman in public matters. My premonition, the wizard answered. I've never felt this matter was simple. Sauron's power shows signs of resurgence. Ever since I escaped Dol Guldur, I've felt uneasy. I intend to investigate the Anduin Valley and its surroundings for clues. A wizard's premonitions were rarely wrong. I wish you well, Liyue said, and then added a small favor. If you meet refugees or people in need on your travels, you can direct them to me. Roadside Fort is large and can take in many. Of course, I'll do what I can, Gandalf replied. There's one more thing. Liyue hesitated, then entrusted the matter to Gandalf personally. Gandalf, this may never happen, but if the day comes that I die, will you bring my body back to my territory? Gandalf arched an eyebrow and gave him a long, meaningful look. A moment later, he nodded. Yes, we are friends. If that day comes, I will find a way. Even if I'm no longer of this world by then, I will see it done. Chapter 102, Discussion and Territory Extension. When Gandalf agrees to something, it's usually settled. Your journey may encounter many dangers, he said. Liyue pulled a few golden apples from his backpack. Take these with you. You know what they're for. Gandalf didn't take them at once. He looked at Liyue. Aren't you coming along? No, I plan to develop my territory for a while, so I won't be adventuring. Maybe later, next year or in a few months, once the matter of your lands is settled, I might go for a stroll. All right. Gandalf lit his old Toby pipeweed, a Shire specialty, and amusedly blew smoke rings shaped like a ship, letting them drift out the window. It was a charming trick. Any child would have been enraptured. Then suddenly, Liyue asked, probing, Have you ever considered that the One Ring might be right here with us? I know what you mean. Gandalf glanced at him. You mean the ring Bilbo has. Liyue nodded, waiting. That ring does possess some power, but believe me, it's not the One Ring you fear. Why? Liyue asked. Because if it truly were the One Ring, Bilbo would have gone mad long ago. Never underestimate the One Ring, Liyue. It has a fatal allure for all living things in Middle-earth. Anyone who falls under its spell is like a creature sunk in a quagmire. Even 100 orcs couldn't drag them out. Your description is vivid, Liyue admitted. Gandalf smiled faintly and continued. The One Ring is alive in a sense. It has its own will and is cunning in its bewitchment. It doesn't simply make a person act in one way. Instead, it amplifies whatever tendencies or weaknesses are already within them, guiding them quietly, almost imperceptibly, into the kind of ruin they are most likely to accept. Even I would not want to touch that thing. Liyue's view of the ring deepened. Its danger was subtle and insidious, like a flattering traitor who praises while leading a weak-willed person into disaster in the direction they prefer. Take Gandalf himself. Were he to gain the One Ring, his instinct wouldn't be tyranny. He would want to use it for good, to help people. But that very kindness could be his weakness. At first, he might simply seek to do more with the power, to help more people. Gradually, that could become a desire to impose order, to make people follow his decrees for their own good. Everyone must do good, he might say at first, and then everyone must do good every day, until the rules became ever harsher and punishment followed any deviation. In the end, a white demon king could arise, a ruler as oppressive in his way as Sauron. A world enslaved by a supposedly benevolent dictator would differ little from one under Sauron. Both would bring fear and suffering. Even a gentle, upright old man like Gandalf could turn extremist under the ring's influence. Liyue felt a chill imagining what might happen if he himself were bewitched by it. Simply not being driven out would be a victory. Logically, he had seen the ring already, yet beyond the initial bewitchment when he first saw it, it had not shown further influence. He even felt as if it were keeping its distance from him, almost playing hard to get. I'll try to find a way to deal with it, he said vaguely. That would be best, Gandalf replied, pleased. Middle-earth had gained another layer of protection. Liyue walked to the window and looked west toward the Shire, thinking, destroy the ring now? No, the world was in a relatively calm phase, and disrupting that balance with an expedition now would cause problems. He might even become one of those problems. Best to wait until Bilbo returned. Their casual conversation ended quickly. Gandalf ate, took one golden apple, and then set off east toward the Anduin Valley. Wizards know restraint. After seeing him off, Li Wei wandered his territory, watching residents dig stone, checking the vegetable patch, then inspecting the tree farm's timber reserves. Thanks to the residents' energetic labor, the territory's stocks were already substantial. Perhaps it's time for other work, he mused. Mining. Before his adventures began, Li Wei had been going to the iron vein near his lands each day to mine. Though not far for him, it took ordinary people a long walk. Ordering them to dig there now would be impractical. The best solution was to expand the territory until the mine fell inside it. He set to work. He called in people who knew how to build houses or who had helped erect village homes before and had them meet at the city gate. First, they used shovels to turn the grass into a dirt path. That alone didn't extend the territory. Then Li Wei gave them building blocks and had them construct a road leading out from the gate, laying down tracks and fences and placing torches or street lamps along its side. This time it worked. That stretch of road became part of the territory. From there, they could continue extending the road outward, section by section. With the right method, the residents could carry out territory expansion without Li Wei's constant supervision. Many infrastructure projects could be delegated to them. Although each person could only carry one block at a time, with enough hands their combined efficiency could rival or even surpass his own. Very good, Li Wei thought. The territory's future looked bright. Thanks to everyone who supported me. Taoist Book Mountain, 1,500 coins. Jim Liu, 300 coins. Taoist Taishang, 100 coins. And all my friends who voted. I appreciate your support. Regarding the sword's name, it's hard to change now, so it'll stay as is for the moment. The highly praised name Natural Enemy, mentioned in the comments, will be reserved for a future weapon. Borrowing the suggestion shamelessly. Chapter 1-3. Mine Tunnel Plan. High-Speed Passage Construction Plan. Li Wei had a small scheme in mind as he looked at the short stretch of road beyond the territory. Since buildings constructed by residents also counted as territory expansion, he didn't need to do everything himself. He was tired of mining anyway. The iron vein outside could be developed by the residents, with ore transported and stored by minecarts and hopper minecarts. There was no redstone here, but the world had an alternative: gear-driven dwarven devices. Their gears could be installed on rails to power carts automatically, just like redstone. Cable cars and mineral hubs in the Lonely Mountain were full of similar mechanisms. There was one caveat: the gears ate materials. Fitting every rail with a gear would be painful on his supplies and time-consuming. Dwarven steel was needed to produce them, and that required the dwarven forge in the underground forging hall. There was no need to chase perfect efficiency. Placing a gear every so often as a power source would be enough. It's decided then. When Li Wei announced the plan, the residents found their lord had initiated a new project, the Ore Vein Track Construction Plan. A wide underground transport tunnel would follow the iron vein's direction, fast, safe, and able to serve as a hidden passage if needed. Li Wei sweetened the deal: faster contribution gains for participants and special commemorative trinkets made by the Lord for the hardest workers. He had underestimated his influence. On the first day the order went out, other resource work nearly ground to a halt. Everyone grabbed tools and queued to dig, break rock, and build the tunnel. Their speed nearly matched Li Wei himself. The residents had grown used to a peaceful life: free, comfortable houses, warm clothes, more than enough food, beef, mutton, chicken, pork, fish, and vegetables, so long as nothing was wasted. With towering iron golems and their lord protecting them, nobody dared to do evil and no enemy dared to invade Roadside Fort. It was, by any measure, one of the safest places in all of Middle-earth. Compared with their old lives, worrying about scraps of food and the movements of orcs and wargs, this safety and abundance felt priceless. Led by village chief Veed's reminders and speeches, the residents wanted to repay the lord somehow. Because Li Wei had little to command and asked for so little, many volunteered extra hours simply to feel they were contributing. These people were simple, not hardened by intrigue or corruption. Their daily labor and security meant everything. Actually, some people can be assigned other tasks. Li Wei said as he watched the crowd around the pit. He had the workers vote, and those less efficient at digging or building were reassigned to other jobs, much to their temporary disappointment. The project pushed on smoothly. Li Wei checked his map and the surrounding terrain. Roadside Fort wasn't exactly close to the vein. The straight-line distance was at least 20 kilometers. When he had mined there himself, the trips were long and his pack always returned full. 20 kilometers would be a daunting tunnel for most settlements. Between labor, wages, and geological stability, such a work could take years. But here, 20 kilometers was just a target. With the residents' manpower and willingness to work overtime, the tunnel could be done in a few months. If there were even more workers, it might go faster. Li Wei thought of the earthworms in Moria. Those things dug faster than he ever could, and smiled at the thought. Perhaps I should make time to visit River Valley City. River Valley City, another territory of his, was still being rebuilt in older ways. Its people didn't yet know they could use special tools. They were fixing ruins with their accustomed methods, sowing ordinary seeds. Li Wei had left a pumpkin patch and an infinite water source, so they wouldn't lack food or clean water. Under Bard's leadership and with dwarven help, the city was reviving steadily, though not at Roadside Fort's pace. Li Wei didn't have the energy to manage both places closely. If it weren't for the need to summon iron golems, he might not have taken that territory at all. From the start, he'd set up an offline management system. If asked, the Lord was simply not there. First, take care of home, then expand when the mechanisms are stable, he told himself. Satisfied that the new territorial project was proceeding well, Li Wei took a stack of gold ingots and stepped into the Hellgate. The world changed instantly. Freezing air gave way to oppressive heat. Temperature meant little to Li Wei unless it reached extremes that caused actual harm. He felt the difference, but wasn't bothered. He had only 3 things to do in the Nether today: trade, trade, and trade. He set down a large chest, corralled a few passing piglins, tossed out several stacks of gold, and waited for them to throw back their items. Chapter 104, Bilbo's Visit. For Li Wei, there were only 2 kinds of truly valuable items to trade with the piglins. One was ender pearls, useful for teleportation, and the other was enchanted books, though those were rare and depended entirely on luck. He'd spent 2 stacks of gold before pulling an enchanted book once, and it turned out to be Soul Speed, a practically useless enchantment that only sped movement on soul sand. Li Wei wondered if the piglins did that on purpose. They could be irritating sometimes, but the trading had to go on. Under a steady stream of gold ingots, the piglins produced several chests stuffed with all sorts of items. Li Wei managed to trade enough for a full row of ender pearls, over 140 in total. It was a small milestone toward being free of constant scavenging for pearls. With enough pearls in hand, the first thing he did was combine them with blaze powder to make Eyes of Ender. Back at Roadside Fort, Li Wei tossed an Eye of Ender into the sky. It rose with a trail of particles, hovered, swiveled left and right, and after a moment it popped, bursting into dust in midair. So there was no end portal in this world. My lord! As Li Wei was considering the spot where the eye had dissolved, a resident ran up in a hurry. What is it? There's a hobbit at the gate, Baggins. He says he's your friend. Shall we let him in? Li Wei brightened. Of course, I'll go out. The resident watched him leave, opened his mouth as if to say something, then fell silent. Their lord did almost everything himself, cooking, fetching, never bothered to command his servants. If he ever started giving orders, a crowd would form in an instant. Splash! The city gate opened. Welcome. I've been waiting for you, Bilbo, Li Wei called as the hobbit stepped inside. Forgive me, Li Wei, Bilbo said, bundled in a thick overcoat, looking weary. You wouldn't believe what happened at my house. It was terrible. Was it robbed? Worse. Bilbo's voice was indignant. My cousins, the Sackville Baggins, they've been trying to take Bag End for ages. While we were away on the adventure, they declared me dead and even held my funeral. When I went back, they were moving my furniture out. There was nothing left, and they wanted to auction the sword you gave me. Li Wei frowned. He knew the Sackvilles had always coveted Bilbo's property and been rude about it. If memory served, in the future, Saruman would exploit that family's greed to get information about the Shire, selling them out, sheltering spies, and the Sackvilles' treachery would help bring chaos to the Shire. For now, he listened. It was a struggle, but I managed to drive them all off, Bilbo continued with a relieved sigh. When they pretended not to know me, as if I were some vagrant, I nearly lost it. Fortunately, I had that burglar contract Thorin left me. Without it, I couldn't have proved who I was. Liyue smiled. I remember. You fainted the first time you saw that document. Yes, Gandalf had to calm me down, Bilbo said. I'm very glad I went on that journey. He glanced around at the people working and resting in the fort. Are these the residents you mentioned? Yes, they recently settled at Roadside Fort. They used to live in the Anduin Valley between the Misty Mountains and the Black Forest, but that area's become dangerous. Many hobbits once lived there before crossing west and, with the king's permission, founding the Shire. Bilbo shook his head. No one in my family ever told me that. I didn't know. The king I mentioned, Liyue added, was from a kingdom that's fallen now. He didn't elaborate further. Gandalf would be the one to explain the full story. Bilbo followed Liyue into the keep, curiosity in his eyes. Liyue, I brought something for you. He set his backpack on the table and carefully took out 12 bottles of a beautiful red wine. Old cellar vintage, he said. The finest wine my family's kept. It's very old, older than I am. The Sackvilles have always coveted it, but I won't let them have it. These are for you. You won't be disappointed. Thank you, Liyue said, placing the bottles away one by one. I don't usually, well, I'll treasure them. Bilbo beamed. So what did you want to see me about? Liyue paused, then met Bilbo's puzzled eyes. Bilbo, I know you have something special on you. Bilbo's hand darted to his pocket and froze. Pardon? I don't know what you mean. A ring. I know you must be wearing one. Bilbo's face went pale for a moment. He fumbled in his pocket, surprised at himself. How long had it been there? He couldn't remember when he'd taken it out. Recalling his last conversation with Gandalf, he admitted, Yes, I do have a very odd ring. I didn't even know it was in my pocket. Do you want me to see it? Liyue asked. Bilbo was about to take it out. No, don't pull it out, Bilbo. Liyue hurriedly stopped him. I'm very interested in magical things. I'd like to study the ring. Bilbo hesitated, then nodded. If you need to, you can examine it. No, don't give it to me, Liyue said quickly. It's better on your finger. Would you like a glass of milk, by the way? Actually, I've been drinking milk these past few days. Yes, thank you. Bilbo took the milk and drank it in one gulp. Very fresh. After Bilbo finished, Liyue smiled. All right, let's begin. Don't worry, these are just small experiments. I won't take your ring. I understand, Bilbo said solemnly. I'll cooperate as best I can. He looked a little uneasy, then cleared his throat. But I don't mean to criticize, Liyue. Maybe it's just different customs, but it's considered very impolite here to talk to someone with your back turned. Liyue turned around, meeting Bilbo's eyes, and the hobbit visibly relaxed. Chapter 105, Intimidation. I was just afraid you'd suddenly pull that thing out, Liyue muttered, turning helplessly as he tightened the straps on his pack. He still had a few milk buckets stashed inside. That ring was like a beacon. He had to be careful. The little experiment targeting the one ring began at once. First, lava, Liyue said. Bilbo, do you see that pool of lava? I see it, Bilbo answered, frowning. But what do you mean by pool? It's a block I'm used to measuring by, about the distance of an adult's step. Got it. What next? Bilbo took the ring out and looked at Liyue. The band shimmered beside the lava as if trying its best to be noticed. Throw it in, Liyue told him. Huh? Just throw it in. If it's really lost, I'll find you another one. All right? Bilbo closed his eyes and tossed the ring into the lava without a second thought. Nothing happened. There was no crackle of an item burning. The ring didn't melt. Instead, it floated as if held by some invisible force, unchanged. When Liyue scooped some lava with a bucket, Bilbo reached in and picked the ring back up. After being immersed in the fire, it felt oddly cold, not a touch of heat. Come with me, Liyue said. They walked back toward the nether gate. Liyue glanced left, then right, then up to make sure the sky looked normal. Try throwing the ring into this portal. Is this a magic gate? I'm curious what it will do. Bilbo didn't hesitate. He tossed the ring into the portal. It passed straight through as if the portal weren't there and dropped to the ground on the other side. Li Wei then pulled out a small wooden box. "Put it in here," he said. They tried everything. The ring couldn't be stowed in the box. It wouldn't go into a backpack or a chest. It passed through portals. No conventional method of storage worked. By every definition, it was movable, but it resisted being treated like an ordinary, storable item. Perhaps, Li Wei mused, it was more like a living thing. Some things, he thought, couldn't be destroyed just because someone wanted them gone. Destroying them abruptly would be like cutting off a piece of music mid-phrase, leaving the melody hanging with no resolution. A bad ending. That kind of thing shouldn't be allowed. After the baffling experiments, Bilbo lingered in the area for a few days, clearly puzzled. "Sometimes I can't tell the difference between this place and Rivendell," Bilbo sighed as he climbed a nearby hill and looked over the territory. "Aside from a little less wild scenery, it's just as good. The people are happy." "If you want, you can stay here as long as you like," Li Wei offered. Bilbo hesitated. An elf lord in Rivendell had said much the same thing to him earlier. He smiled and shook his head. "Thank you, but Bag End is home. If you ever want to visit, you're welcome. Just walk right in. No need to knock. There'll be plenty of tea. Make sure your refreshments don't run out," Li Wei teased. "If you can eat it all, any amount is fine." Bilbo glanced at the sky. "It's about time I went back. Bag End must be freezing. I should light the stove." "All right, I'll come with you. Don't forget you still have a stack of golden apples stored with me. A stack is 64. I figured you'd want them." Bilbo swallowed, and the two left the city together, strolling toward the Shire as if on a lazy hike. On the third day after leaving Roadside Fort, the first snowflake fell. Winter had arrived. By the time they reached Bag End, a good layer of snow lay in the yard. "The good news is no one came to my house while I was away," Bilbo said with a small laugh. "The bad news is it's probably as cold inside as it is out," Li Wei replied. It took Bilbo some time to get the fire going, but soon the hearth was warming the house. Li Wei stacked the golden apples in Bilbo's larder and then asked for directions to the Sackville's house. He wanted to pay a visit. Bilbo followed, more out of worry than anything else. They knocked. There was a commotion inside, voices and footsteps approaching the door. "Who is it? If you're a guest, you've come at a bad time." The door swung open with a creak, and the words died on the lips of the hobbit who answered. "Bilbo? What are you doing here again?" Although Sackville frowned, "We've returned all your things. There's nothing left here. If you lost anything, don't come looking for us." No, it's not me," Bilbo protested, pointing beside him. "This is my friend." "Hello there," Li Wei said calmly. "A human? What do you want?" Otho started, but his voice faltered when he looked up. There was something familiar about the stranger's armor and bearing. Li Wei simply stepped forward and pushed the door wider, ducking to squeeze inside. The commotion startled Lobelia Sackville, who came to the doorway brandishing a frying pan. "Uninvited guests aren't welcome." "Calm down," Li Wei said, mild and precise. "Allow me to introduce myself." Bilbo reached out to speak, but Li Wei gently moved him aside and addressed the Sackvilles in a slow, measured tone. He walked forward, tall and imposing in his dark armor, and listed titles as if reciting his own legend. "I am known as the Orc's Bane, the Warg Slayer, an enemy of the Misty Mountain Orcs and Mordor, an ally of elves and dwarves, a dragon slayer and the Lord Protector of Roadside Fort and Dale. My name is Li Wei," he finished with an easy smile. Otho and Lobelia staggered back until the wall was at their shoulders. Each title drained a little color out of them. By the time Li Wei smiled, they stood as if frozen, terrified. Not a soul would doubt that if Li Wei took one more step, they would begin to sob. "Relax," Li Wei said softly. "I won't harm you. I only heard that you tried to take my friend's home and intended to auction off the gift I gave him." Those words hit like a cold wind. Otho and Lobelia looked at each other, and their faces crumpled. It was over. He was with Bilbo. Chapter 106, Traveling Merchants. Not long after, Li Wei and Bilbo stepped out of the Sackville house. No one tried to stop them. Apart from the Shire guards, there was no one in Middle-earth who would dare interfere. Still, Li Wei hadn't harmed the two hobbits. The Sackville Bagginses had certainly gone too far, but it was largely a matter of property disputes and bad manners. From where he stood, their actions didn't amount to true evil, just greed and unpleasantness. Li Wei merely scared them. demanded an apology, and made them swear never to set foot in Bag End again with improper intentions. That was enough. "After all, I'm not some great villain," he said. Bilbo hesitated at the words, unsure whether to nod or shake his head, but he felt better for it in the end. It was clear the Sackvilles wouldn't bother him again for a long time. Bilbo's house now had two swords, Sting and the dwarven steel blade Leeway had given him. One long, one short, both sharp. They were both mementos and means of safety. Leeway stayed the night at Bilbo's and left at dawn, with Bilbo seeing him off. Before he went, Leeway deliberately walked past the Sackville house again. He sensed two staring eyes watching from inside, a feeling that lingered until he'd put a good distance between them. The family was not beyond redemption, though their story did not end well. In later generations, Lotho Sackville Baggins, driven by greed, ended up dealing with Saruman and met a tragic fate. When the harm their family had caused to the Shire became apparent, Lobelia, Otho's widow, left the last of the family's property to Frodo to help the people and quietly left Hobbiton herself. They were hobbits, after all. Lost in thought, Leeway found himself leaving the Shire's borders. He crossed the old forest and stepped onto snow-covered ground. Then his attention snagged on a withered tree stump with a very smooth cross-section poking out of the ground and a pile of old campfire remains beside it. He recognized the place. It was where, 2 years before, a Barrow Wight had first attacked him at the meeting point of the Barrow Downs and the road. Faint, mournful wails floated from the forest, a warning not to linger. Leeway remembered that day. He had been armed with only a stone sword and no armor, yet he had cut the Wight down. "Do you still think you can scare me now?" he muttered. He frowned at the wails. The Barrow Wights were being needlessly arrogant, crying out before night had even fully fallen. He lit a small campfire and grilled a few pieces of meat. That night, nothing disturbed him. When starlight replaced the afterglow of the sun, he rose and walked toward the Barrow Downs of his own accord. He climbed to a ridge and looked down. Scattered ruins and standing stones dotted the landscape, and near the more impressive stones, tombs clustered. The air had grown hazy, the starlight thinned. Not clouds, but fog, rising from the graves. A piercing scream sliced through the air. Leeway felt his body sag, as if struck by a curse. His steps grew heavy. Barrow Wights were infuriatingly capable of casting such debilitating effects, but Leeway smiled to himself. "This is worse than a ringwraith," he said. He slashed casually behind him. Flames burst with the cut. The Barrow Wight that had leapt the ambush shrieked and tried to dematerialize. Leeway didn't give it the chance. He chased it down with several quick strikes and watched its health evaporate into dust. But this was the Barrow Downs, the Wights' stronghold. In the fog ahead, many thin dark shapes were gathering, some dragging at desiccated bodies, others already becoming insubstantial shadow souls. He counted at least 20. If deployed on open ground, a force like this could wreck 100 elite soldiers. Elven-forged blades were one way to counter them. Leeway's own blades, though not elven, were more than capable of hurting them. "Die for me," he barked. He drew his longsword, sent out a few sharp sword chi strikes, then charged into the crowd, flowing through techniques until his body blurred into after-images, his movements unstoppable. He cut down several Barrow Wights in quick succession, then with a careless shrug said, "Oh, you lot are already dead. Disappear for me." He struck again. The Wights' presence sapped courage, their screams slowed the legs, and their attacks drained life. In another era, even with diamond-grade armor, Leeway might have thought twice about wandering here. Now, he wore a full set of enchanted netherite alloy armor, and his pack always held a stack of golden apples and a variety of potions. Those advantages didn't make the Wights harmless, but under such overwhelming resources, they could only scatter in anger. By the time he left the Barrow Downs, many of the tombs had been ransacked and then left in peace. Ash from burned Wights crunched underfoot, and the cemeteries behind him fell silent. Even the fog ahead thinned as if to guide him away. Obtained Barrow Wight nemesis. From that day on, other creatures would take notice of Leeway. The remaining Barrow Wights here would think twice about leaving their tombs. The road from the Shire to Bree would be far safer at night. Travelers who strayed from the main road wouldn't be as easily preyed upon. For once, The undead, usually the bringers of fear, had been made to taste fear themselves. Barrow-wights also had a reputation for dropping skill orbs at a higher rate than orcs or wargs. If they had been more numerous or easier to find, Leeway might have stayed longer to try and max out some skills. But they weren't hospitable. A few days later, after the first pause in snow, Leeway walked the main road again. He passed Wind and Cloud Peak and headed for Roadside Fort. At the fork leading to the fort, he came upon a group of travelers, standing and staring toward Roadside Fort. Behind them was a long string of transport carts piled with goods. The clothes the caravan wore were not of local make, and the guard's armor was in a style he didn't recognize. "Can I help you?" Leeway called, stepping forward. "Hello," he added. The caravan leader came up and bowed slightly. "Sir, forgive us. We are traveling merchants from a distant eastern land. The last time we passed this way was 3 years ago, and if I remember right, this road did not exist then." "That road didn't exist back then," Leeway agreed, eager to be helpful. "It leads to a recently founded town called Roadside Fort. If your wares are good, the lord there will likely welcome you." "We do have many fine wares," the leader said, patting a cart with a proud smile. "I swear on the grapes of my homeland. Every time we pass through, our pockets overflow with silver. We never come back with unsold cargo." "What's in these carts?" Leeway asked, curious. "The finest vintages," the leader replied with a confident nod. "Wine merchants, then?" Leeway's interest piqued. "Yes, sir. Our wine is known to charm even the elven kings in the old days and now." "Oh?" Leeway brightened. "I'm headed to Roadside Fort. I could take you there. Its lord should be pleased to see you." "Tell me, you said you come from the east. Are you from Dale or from Long Lake Town?" the leader inquired. "No," he said, shaking his head. "We come from an even more distant place, Dorwinion. Thanks to Taoist Shushan for the 1,500 coin reward, thanks to Bonfire Peddler for the 100 coin reward, and thanks to everyone who voted and supported me. I just noticed there's a double monthly pass at the end of the month. Thank you all. Once my health recovers a bit, I'll try to update more frequently and make quicker progress." Chapter 107, Enthusiastic People, Dorwinion. Leeway tried to place it. If his memory served, the country lay on a plain north of Mordor and south of Long Lake Town, bordering East Yi. In Middle-earth, nations often went through cycles of founding, ruin, and rebuilding, but Dorwinion had somehow avoided upheaval. As a nation built on foreign trade, its stance was flexible. Neither Gondor nor the Wainriders, even at the height of their power, had treated it as a foe to be conquered. That neutrality had kept Dorwinion prosperous and wealthy, its vineyards and merchants filling its coffers. The people kept out of wars, minding their own business and focusing on one thing above all: wine. "I've heard of it," Leeway said, nodding as he led the caravan into the city. The caravan leader bowed slightly. "We are honored that you have. If you would accept it, I would like to give you the best barrel from our batch, a small personal gift." Leeway glanced at him. "Do we know each other? Why would you give it to me?" The traveling merchant took a deep breath and then hurried out the words. "If I'm not mistaken, you are the legendary figure in the wilds, Leeway, the dragon slayer, the one they call the wall builder?" He took another breath to steady himself. Formally greeting someone of that reputation had left him nearly breathless. "Ha! I didn't expect you'd recognize me," Leeway said without embarrassment, smiling calmly. "We heard about you in Long Lake Town," the merchant went on. "People there were fewer but much wealthier, which puzzled us. When we asked, they told us about you, about the black-armored dragon slayer, the wall builder." "Ah," Leeway replied. "So you heard early. Don't worry. Come, take a look around. I'm very interested in your goods, and also in your homeland." Perhaps he'd visit Dorwinion someday. They reached the city wall. The caravan guard stared up at its height with awe. Some city walls in national capitals weren't even as tall. Leeway waved, and the guards atop the wall opened the main gate. The caravan rolled smoothly into the city. The local residents stopped their work and watched curiously, and the merchants returned the gaze. Some of the villagers edged forward, guessing who the newcomers might be. Their suspicions were quickly confirmed. But once the novelty wore off, another problem dawned on the residents. They had no money. Supplies were plentiful, and life was comfortable, but coin was scarce. They'd never needed currency before, and had never bothered to accumulate it. Now, with traders in their midst, the realization hit: their purses were empty. On the caravan's side, the merchants had expected a prosperous, well-dressed populace and plenty of silver to be had. They imagined making a tidy profit in a place reputed for wealth. On the other side, the residents scratched their heads helplessly. The merchant waited, watching for buyers, and grew puzzled. "Are our goods so bad?" he wondered. "No," Li Wei said. "They simply don't have money." They all stared. "No money? It hasn't been needed," Li Wei explained. "We can barter, exchange goods for goods." "That will do," the merchant said, brightening. "But we only take quality items, not ordinary things." Li Wei nodded and called out, listing what they could offer. "We have good leather, wool, silk thread, fresh cuts of meat, freshly harvested crops, wheat, corn, potatoes, carrots, beets, scallions, ginger, garlic, and some large, crisp apples, perfect and fresh." These were goods the people here produced themselves. Most families had something to trade. The merchant's eyes widened. "If that's true, we'd be willing to exchange." Li Wei raised his voice. "Rare caravan, set down your tools," he called. The residents cheered and ran home or to the construction site to fetch produce. Before the merchants finished grasping the situation, 2 whole carts of their finest wine had already been exchanged for piles of fresh vegetables, meats, leather, and textiles. The carts came back overflowing. There was no room left. The merchants had made a profit in terms of value. Those goods sold elsewhere would be worth more than a couple of barrels. But their coin purses still looked thin. The caravan leader sat down by the roadside to rest. Li Wei walked over. "Looks like no one else will come to trade," he observed. "Sir," the leader replied, "your residents are very enthusiastic and their lives seem prosperous. It's just they have no money." "They truly have no coin," Li Wei said. Then he patted the merchant's shoulder. "Leave the rest of your goods here. I'll take them all." The merchant gaped. He hadn't expected that. With Li Wei's wealth, he could have emptied Dorwinian of wine many times over, but here he willingly turned over the remaining stock in exchange for useful supplies. In the end, not a single barrel was left. "Come back next time," Li Wei said as the merchants loaded their pockets with goods and headed westward. That Dorwinian wine would not make it to Bree, the Shire, Linden, or the Blue Mountains. Those towns were unlikely to taste this rare vintage. In return, the people of Roadside Fort now had specialties and fresh produce to sustain them, and perhaps would see such trade again. In the cheerful bustle, Li Wei walked past the busy residents and returned alone to his castle. He opened the gifted barrel, the merchant's prized barrel from the batch, and took a small sip. It was strong, a slight sweetness underneath a sharper sour note, with oak and fruit lingering in the finish. Li Wei wasn't a connoisseur, but the wine pleased him. Anything that makes one happy is good. "Not bad," he murmured. He did not drink much more. Instead, he set the glass down and opened his synthesis table. The caravan had brought more than fresh food and new acquaintances. Their arrival had unlocked a new crafting recipe: wine barrel. Chapter 108, Winemaking and Trade. Unlocking the barrel had also unlocked the brewing system. By filling a barrel with different ingredients, you could brew many kinds of alcohol. Wheat could be made into ale, a bit of honey turned it into mead, water and apples made cider, plums made plum wine. There was carrot wine, corn wine, grape wine, rum, vodka, far more varieties than anyone had expected. The brewing process had been simplified too. Add water, put in the ingredients, seal it, and wait. The mountain of grain piled up in the territory finally had a use. Li Wei had a warehouse built on an empty plot, then dug out and finished a fairly large multi-story underground wine cellar beneath it. The warehouse above stored raw materials. The cellar below was for brewing and storing finished products. It wasn't huge. Li Wei stopped when he felt it was enough, but he estimated room for a few thousand barrels. After working in the cellar for several days, he emerged at dawn to find hundreds of barrels already brewing. Everything was organized. Sections for each type of wine, signs that a particular area could only brew one kind to avoid confusion. As brewing time passed, the alcohol content in the barrels rose until it hit a natural brewing limit. Opening a barrel early would halt the process and prevent further increase in strength. The upgraded brewing system also meant that some spirits did not require traditional distillation to reach a high proof. Vodka, for example, could brew up to 55 proof. One gulp of that would make anyone dizzy. When Li Wei came up from the cellar, Veed hurried over. "My lord, everyone asked me to inquire whether they can take some grain to brew. A few of us used to know a bit about brewing when we had more," Veed explained. "They wanted to ask before, but since they never saw you drink and never saw any alcohol around, they thought you didn't like it and didn't dare say anything." Veed had learned that Li Wei was nothing like the nobles he once served. No airs, no stifling etiquette. He still didn't know the proper bow to make, so he defaulted to common courtesy. Li Wei didn't care, which put everyone at ease. Even old village chief had stopped overthinking how to speak to him. With respect and loyalty intact, the villagers began to be more open about their needs. "Just let them do it," Li Wei said. "You know what I mean." "I understand, my lord. Take as much as you need, but no waste." Veed carried Li Wei's message back to the residents. Grain had once been too precious to squander. If there was enough to eat, that was all anyone dared hope for. Here, however, as long as nothing was wasted, it could be used freely. At the news, some old craftsmen eagerly rolled up their sleeves and got to work. They ran into another problem, though. They could make tools and containers from the abundant materials, but some brewing processes still required skills and ingredients they lacked. A few of them had enough skill to qualify as brewers, but their reputation wasn't high enough. Their status hadn't reached the practitioner level, so they couldn't be formally employed to do certain tasks. This left gaps in the brewing chain, necessary ingredients and processes that took time to produce. The residents found their own solution: merchants. The Dorwinian traders had inspired them. If traveling merchants could bring goods to Roadside Fort, why not form a caravan to trade elsewhere and bring back what the village needed? Several residents who had been to larger towns volunteered to organize it and knew roughly what things cost. Li Wei approved the plan. A small caravan of 8 was assembled to represent Roadside Fort. Villagers entrusted them with lists of items to bring back, stipulating what they wanted and what they did not. The caravan left with a small cart of goods. 4 of the 8 had been hunters and could handle common dangers, though with the Lord's name in the background, troublemakers were unlikely to interfere anyway. The roads from Bree to Weathertop to Roadside Fort had grown safer in recent years. Orcs and bandits that had once lurked on those routes seemed to avoid this area now. Even wargs no longer wandered the vicinity. Rumors had spread about a formidable presence who punished petty criminals, an avenger who once even intervened in a Shire dispute. The ruffians in Bree had consequently gone quiet. Some returned to farming, others found honest work. The label ruffian, once a protective badge for miscreants, had become a hanging sword. The caravan reached Bree in a few days. Unfortunately, a Dorwinian caravan had passed through shortly before them and bought much of the market. The Roadside Fort team pushed on to the Shire, and there they fared much better. The hobbits loved fresh produce in winter. Though they hoarded preserved food, fresh vegetables, fruits, and meat were a rare treat. The little cart's goods sold out in the first town. With the proceeds, plus some successful bartering, the caravan bought the items the residents had requested, town by town. They returned with a full cart of new supplies. The trial trade had been a success. Thank you all for your monthly and recommendation votes. Take care of your health. Indeed, health is wealth. Chapter 109, Expanding Trade. The Shire, a region almost entirely populated by hobbits, was one of the few places in Middle-earth that still enjoyed a truly peaceful life. It was the sort of life the god of creation had intended for his children when the world was made. In these times, very few could enjoy such calm. Even royal families and great nobles at the height of power were often tormented by the great enemy or dark forces. They had little chance to rest easy. Yet west of the Misty Mountains, more people than before were living quietly and happily. A small caravan returned to Roadside Fort without incident, a cart piled high with goods. A crowd gathered at once, collecting commissioned items. For a time, the fort was lively again. Li Wei watched the caravan from a roadside chair, thoughtful. Merchants did more than trade goods. They expanded influence and showcased a territory's culture. If materials sat idle, it made sense to put them to use. He decided to form a formal caravan. One day later, the group expanded to 12, the original 8+4 residents recommended by others, people who had learned archery or had some combat skill and wanted to take part in trading. 4 served as merchants, handling inventory and sales. The other 8 provided escort. The merchants wore roadside forts woolen sweaters or leather clothes and carried small weapons for self-defense, while the escorts wore warm clothing and armor forged with elven craftsmanship, bearing longswords and bows. The number of carts grew to 3 large wagons, each pulled by moderately fast horses from the stables. Fast enough that travel was efficient, but not so fast the carts would tip. Their route went primarily west, Bree, the Shire, Lindon, then on to the gathering place of the Dwarves of the Blue Mountains, before returning. The road was generally safe, there were few enemies along the way, and sticking to the main roads usually ensured a successful round trip. Each horse had armor, sturdy and protective, and with the fully armed escorts, it was unlikely anyone would dare attack them unless they faced a force of notable size. Just before departure, Li Wei had a flag made and wrote his name on it in the common tongue, marking the caravan as under his protection. He gave final instructions at the gate. If you encounter homeless wanderers or refugees on the road, bring them back. But remember, roadside fort does not take in hooligans or lazy people. Those who refuse to work, yet expect benefits, can go elsewhere. Just don't bring them here. I remember, my lord, the lead merchant said. I swear by my name, I will carry out this task diligently. The rest echoed the oath. Li Wei nodded as the caravan set off, everyone wrapped in warm cloaks against wind and snow. They would bring goods that were rare in this season to the peoples of Middle-earth and announce Roadside Fort's existence to the wider world. Back inside the fort, Li Wei assigned a new priority, ice harvesting. Other work could wait, but ice had to be harvested in winter. He rearranged labor. A small portion of people would keep tending the gardens. Half of the remaining workforce would continue excavating the mine shaft, and the other half would use the precise gathering picks he'd provided at the ice fields. Priority went to ice harvesting, then mining. Keep the ice stations saturated. Any surplus labor could be shifted to tunneling or other tasks. The ice block supply began to grow steadily. Though it might not match the speed of Li Wei's own digging, it ran continuously and freed him to work elsewhere, such as the Nether. Whoosh! Crossing the warped portal and aligning with coordinates on his map, Li Wei marked the construction route at the River Valley city end. Then he returned to the warehouse, loaded a large pile of materials, and set to work. He was building a direct nether route from Roadside Fort to River Valley City. For practical reasons, he planned 3 parallel routes. An ice path, temporarily empty because ice reserves weren't yet sufficient, a flat track for horses to travel easily, and a minecart rail. The minecart track was really a rail laid along the road to facilitate large-scale material transport or for when he didn't feel like walking and wanted to sit in a slow-moving cart. The road would be 140 kilometers in length, a long project, but once complete, it would be a true high-speed thoroughfare, straight, obstacle-free, and efficient. Even without the ice path, a horse could make the journey from Roadside Fort to River Valley City in about 2 hours, which equated to traversing over 1,100 kilometers of overworld distance in that time. Completing the ice path would halve the travel time. Construction would be tedious, but the payoff would be immense. Li Wei advanced all 3 tracks at once. The length and material demand meant he first produced a large number of transport minecarts, filled them with cobblestone and other fire-resistant blocks, and had them follow him, carrying supplies while the road was built. He even emptied his ender chest to use its contents for materials. Time passed quickly. Half a month later, he had completed roughly 1/10 of the road and had just run out of blue ice when the old village chief came to see him about the residents. My lord, many people have reached a new stage during this time. They can now open chests, the chief reported. Good. Keep it up, Li Wei said, dropping more blocks into his backpack. This means they are now qualified to live here, provided they maintain their current state. Contribution can increase, and it can also be deducted. If someone stops working and producing, their contribution will gradually be lost, unless they are no longer fit for labor. The old village chief listened gravely. I will remind them, my lord. The residents will be informed. Li Wei continued. Becoming a formal resident also means access to transport minecarts. We'll need that later for iron ore collection. The mine tunnel isn't dug through yet, so continue as you have been. I'll be quite busy for a while, but on the first day of each month, I will stop work and receive feedback. You can come to me then. I understand, my lord. The old village chief bowed and returned to his duties. Chapter 110, Long Distance Passage. The construction of the Nether Road was always going to take a long time, not only because of the distance, but because as Li Wei built, he had to clear every obstacle in his path. He didn't hesitate to tunnel through nether bastions, smash apart ruins where piglins gathered, or blast entire sections of basalt. Ruins and bastions that didn't block him could remain as scenery, but anything standing directly in the road was destroyed without mercy. A clear passage came first. There was no need to worry about mobs spawning on the road. With Li Wei's current equipment, they posed no threat. He simply ran them down. Zombified piglins that blocked the way were cut down, wandering piglins were pushed aside, and howling ghasts were shot from the sky. Any Enderman who lingered with a block in hand and looked at him too long received a slap. Compared with the orcs outside, the Endermen here seemed braver. Even after a hit, they still screamed and charged, only to turn into pearls in the end. Time passed slowly and steadily. People in the overworld worked, and Li Wei worked in the Nether. There wasn't a single idle person in the whole territory. The development and accumulation of the land proceeded peacefully. No major incidents occurred. The one thing Li Wei worried about during that time was the dragon egg. It was still incubating, and he had no idea when it would finish. It didn't resemble any dragon egg he'd seen in mods before. None he'd known took this long to hatch. It might be a native dragon egg, which would make its origin suspicious. Nothing major happened for most of the winter. The only notable event came around midwinter, when a group of more than a dozen weary travelers appeared at the city gate. They followed the merchant caravan, having heard that this place welcomed diligent, friendly people, offering warm shelter, food, and necessities. After Li Wei ordered a quick identity check, they were let in. The residents were put in charge of guiding them, finding housing, assigning daily work, and introducing them to communal duties. The refugees had never seen such hospitality. Once they confirmed the residents weren't lying and that the promises were real, they swore an oath on the spot. They pledged allegiance to the Lord and lifetime service at Roadside Fort, among other commitments. For now, they were temporary residents, working until their contributions made them full members of the community. We used to live in a small village east of Arquette, the de facto leader of the group said after they'd settled. Life was tolerable until a band of hooligans and bandits came through. They looted and smashed everything. Our food and the little silver we had were taken. Then they moved north and hid in the nearby forest. It's strange. Lately, many of these gangs have abandoned the towns and gathered in Chetwood Forest. Every weak village on the way has been plundered. We were one of them. After our village was destroyed, we wandered from town to town until we found this place. Thank you, merciful Lord, for letting us start over here. Life here is better than when we were at our best before. Hearing this, Li Wei felt a pang of helplessness. No wonder he hadn't seen bandits in the nearby towns. They'd realized they couldn't survive there and gathered in the forest. If he remembered correctly, Chetwood Forest was north of Bree, near Archet. As a town built beside a forest, Archet had a lively timber trade. The fact that merchants had reached such remote villages meant the caravan had traveled far. Have the bandits been active recently? Li Wei asked. No news of them for the past month. They're probably hiding. I understand. You all get on with your duties. Yes, Lord. The refugees began to adapt and join production. Li Wei opened his map and found the place they'd described, north of Bree, along the Greenway. He remembered Gandalf mentioning it once. He'd been attacked there before. That forest was still too lawless. For now, Li Wei did nothing. It was winter. The bandits had already taken supplies and holed up. It would be hard to find them now, and they weren't producing anything, so to survive, they'd have to move eventually. When the first green of spring appeared, that would be their last chance to plunder, and their downfall. With that in mind, Li Wei stepped back through the Hellgate and hurried to the furthest point of the road. The road was already long. Each time he entered the Nether, he had to ride almost an hour to reach the latest construction. He estimated that by the end of winter, the road would be finished. Then he could travel between Roadside Fort and River Valley City several times a day. Residents in both territories might not meet often, but they could both see their lord more frequently. Now the lord could occasionally come online. This winter wasn't particularly harsh, at least for the residents of Roadside Fort and River Valley City. Since the Five Armies battle, many ruined houses in River Valley City had been rebuilt with dwarven help and the residents' labor, housing a good number of people. Some chose to spend the winter in the city instead of returning to Long Lake Town. At the end of the winter, as residents sat by their fires waiting for spring, a gate of obsidian appeared in the city wall, glowing with a purple light. Li Wei rode from it. The footsteps of his horse quickly drew the attention of a sentry on the wall. The man looked out with curiosity, then his eyes widened. "It's the Lord." News of the Lord's arrival spread fast. People came out of their homes, wrapping coats around themselves, but Bard reached him first. "Everything's been going very smoothly," Bard said. "I can see that," Li Wei replied. "No one looks hungry, and none of them seem desperate. In a few years, this place could return to the peak River Valley City once had." Li Wei looked at the rebuilding ruins and felt impatient. "It's still too slow," he said. "After being away so long, it's time I fulfill my responsibilities as Lord. Thanks to Book Mountain for the 500 coin reward. Thanks to Martian King for the 588 reading coin reward. Thanks to Qianwu Qin for the 500 coin reward. Thanks to Reader 2270408, 20440709 for the 100 coin reward. Thanks to A Small Mallet for the 100 coin reward. And thanks to all who voted. Thank you for your support." Chapter 11, Benevolence. This is iron. This is a stick. This is a pickaxe. Wham! An iron pickaxe appeared on the workbench. Bard stared at it in disbelief. How? How did you do that?" "You can think of it as a kind of magic I have." Magic, that single word smoothed over everything. If Li Wei had said something like block people or some obscure term, Bard wouldn't have understood, but magic made it click. With wide eyes, he turned the solid iron tool over in his hands, marveling. He had known Li Wei used some magic, potions that healed wounds, the power to fly, those red blocks that exploded, but a crafting ability was something else entirely. "If you can make any tool like that, won't blacksmiths lose their jobs?" Bard asked, already leaping ahead in his mind. "What's the point of learning to forge?" "There's still a point," Li Wei said. "To actually craft something directly, people first have to learn how to make it. Of course, simple wooden or stone tools don't require much skill." "I see. I think I understand." Bard nodded and began thinking over Li Wei's explanation. Then a detail clicked. "Wait, residents?" "Yes," Li Wei replied. He dropped a few items on the ground and continued. "That's exactly why I came here. Because Bard was highly respected and held the office of Deputy of River Valley Town, he had the authority to synthesize many items. He just didn't know it yet." After finishing the basic structure around where the Hell Gate had appeared, Li Wei led Bard toward the pumpkin patch and showed him more. "These square pumpkins solve the food problem," Li Wei said. "They grow incredibly fast." Bard spoke before he could stop himself. "Even in winter, these vines won't wither? One field like this could feed River Valley Town and Long Lake Town. No one would starve." "Yes, but that's not all." Li Wei set down an ender chest, pulled out seed packets, planted them, and then used bone meal to speed their growth. The crops popped to maturity almost instantly. Bard's jaw dropped. "They can grow in freezing weather and mature instantly? I've only heard of such crops in legends." "Magic seeds, you could say." Li Wei handed one packet to Bard. "On average, these seeds can be harvested every 3 days. They aren't afraid of severe cold or specific seasons. They just need nearby water." Bard felt his heart pound. He had seen hunger firsthand and knew what it did to people. The lightheadedness, the stomach cramps, the way shortages turned communities unstable. This kind of food security would change everything. The joy was almost overwhelming. "Can anyone use this? The residents too?" "Of course." Li Wei set up a workbench and began crafting tools, showing Bard the recipes, how to collect materials, and how to transport blocks. After a quick hands-on tutorial, Bard tested each function. Li Wei said, "All right, you know how to farm and mine blocks now. Go gather the residents and start the territory restoration work." Bard froze. I might need a little time to adjust." "My lord, I can handle it," a smooth voice piped up from behind a building. Bard turned. "Alfred, why are you here?" "To stand ready to carry out the commands of my lord and the lord at any time," Alfred said, approaching and falling into a rigid, respectful posture before Li Wei. Li Wei's slight frown made him bow lower, not daring to look up. Li Wei wasn't particularly fond of Alfred. If anything, he was indifferent. Bard sighed and waved Alfred to the side, then explained to Li Wei, "This man did a lot of bad things in the past, mostly embezzling town property while helping the town head with the accounts. Still, he's competent at handling affairs, and during the reconstruction, he's been useful." "Several months ago, the residents wanted to hang him," Bard added. "When everything, the dragon, the failed evacuation of Lonely Mountain, the recent war, happened, they saw how much was at stake. I know that war relied heavily on you and that death and slaughter didn't fall on us that time. I prayed it never would, again, big or small, so I gave him a chance." Bard pointed to the stiff man behind him. "When he was ostracized, left nearly to starve in a corner, I told him if he'd atone for his sins for the rest of his life, he and his descendants could remain here as normal residents." "We are different from you, Li Wei," Bard said earnestly. "We, Alfred, the other townsfolk, are small people. We struggle to survive and keep what we want. You and those wizards are not ordinary mortals like us. You have more choices." Li Wei listened, then surprised him with a smile. "Benevolence is an excellent quality, provided it's not used on enemies. I trust your judgment. I'll leave the arrangements to you." "However," Li Wei continued, "even small people sometimes do earth-shattering things and can change the course of history. Don't underestimate them." Bard looked from Li Wei to Alfred, relief and an odd pride mixing on his face. "You always leave people speechless." "And you?" Li Wei replied. "You and Gandalf." "Well, Gandalf certainly knows how to talk." Gandalf's gift of persuasion was extraordinary, but Alfred was different. Li Wei gestured to the tools on the workbench. "His prestige is negative. He can't use these. We'll revisit this when he completes his atonement." "I understand," Bard said, nodding. "I'll supervise him closely." Chapter 112. The Feast River Valley's population was large, far larger than roadside forts, and its people needed time to adjust. After entrusting the new developments there to Bard, Li Wei logged off again and raced back from Hellgate. If anyone knew he had covered more than 1,100 kilometers in just 2 hours, from River Valley to Roadside Fort, they would have been stunned. For the folk of Roadside Fort, however, it was nothing unusual. From their point of view, their lord had only been away less than a day. He left in the morning on business and returned by evening. Spring was coming. Stepping through Hellgate, Li Wei felt it immediately. Roadside snow mixed with runoff had frozen overnight, but the cold spells were easing. This winter was nearly done. The city gates swung open. Li Wei watched several transport carts clop into the town, horses with dull eyes pulling them. The caravan had come back, bringing goods from far away. "My lord, the trip went smoothly," the lead merchant said, hopping down from his cart when he saw Li Wei at the gate. "We passed through small towns in Bree and then the Shire. People there liked our goods. Trading was easy." He went on. "We then went west to the Elves' Port in Linden. They were very welcoming, let us in without question, and bought nearly half our cargo. They paid in silver and in jewelry, corals and diamonds, all placed on the foremost cart." The merchant led Li Wei to the carts. Indeed, the elves of Linden had been generous. There were quite a few diamonds. "Good," Li Wei said. "We can collect more diamonds next time." "Oh, one more thing, my lord." The merchant hesitated, then relayed. "An old elf with a gray beard, he seemed to be their leader, asked me to deliver a message. Círdan sends his regards and invites the founder of the Free Cities to visit Linden." "Círdan the shipwright. Unexpected news." "I know him. I'll visit when I have time," Li Wei replied. "If I haven't gone by the next time you pass, remind him and send my greetings." The merchants nodded, and the lead continued. After Linden, we reached the Blue Mountains. The dwarves there were very interested in our tough leather, useful for their crafts. They bought almost all of it. We also saw some dwarves packing to migrate east. I asked them. They didn't hide their route. They'll cross the Misty Mountains and River Valley this spring, then head north back to their old homeland. Erebor, Leeway supplied. That place was recently liberated and needs people. Hearing their lord mention a distant territory surprised the townspeople. Roadside Fort had another lordly domain across the mountains. While the merchants finished their reports and chatted, the guards began unloading armor and goods. When the jewels and diamonds caught the crowd's eye, everyone eagerly carried them toward the castle. Still, Leeway only kept the diamonds. The rest, pretty but largely decorative, were distributed among the residents to do as they wished. Leeway didn't bother with the details. He already had ample gems stored in Erebor. He could have flooded the castle with them if he wanted. The caravan had also brought people, refugees harried by bandits and roadside drifters who'd been given food and directions to make their own way here. Over the winter, the territory had gained more than 100 new residents, and most had already adapted to communal life and joined in the work. After affairs were settled and a few days of rest, the caravan members gathered to plan the next trading run, what goods to take, which routes to travel. 2 of the guards decided to return home to farm and left the team during this break. 2 restless residents eager for travel quickly took their places. The merchant team remained the same 4. "I've always wanted to travel like this," one caravan member said. "It's marvelous, not having to worry if goods will sell, about silver or expenses. The road is safe. We get to move through different regions, learn their customs, and have endless things to talk about: home, trade, people. I'm already looking forward to the next trip." "Just let the roads thaw a bit more," another added. "And the Lord said he's got something to say. Don't want to miss it." So, in the square at the heart of Roadside Fort, everyone gathered. Water ran down from the fountain's top, and the pool below never seemed to rise. There was no fancy mechanism to explain it, but it had always been so. The whole territory massed in the open space before it, ears pricked and eyes fixed on Leeway, fearful of missing a single word. "My people," Leeway called. A cheer rose like a wave. No speech was needed, just his presence set them off. Leeway raised his hands to quiet them and asked, "Do you know what next month is?" The residents exchanged puzzled looks. It was already February. What was special about March? Leeway answered calmly, 2 years ago, in the spring of 2940, Roadside Fort was founded. Oh, the crowd erupted. "Founding Day." "That's right, Founding Day," Leeway confirmed. "It's decided. On the first day of next month, we will hold the Roadside Fort Founding Feast. I declare 7 days of rest for everyone, starting then." A 7-day feast. The square went wild. The announcement detonated through the crowd like gunpowder. Discussions and cheers echoed into the distance. After the cheering died down, Leeway laughed and hopped down from the fountain's edge. Amid the revelry, he headed to the wine cellar and ordered the strong liquors brought out. The next few days promised to be lively. No one would be working. The only hazards were overeating or getting drunk and collapsing on the road. The townsfolk threw themselves into preparations, decorating the square on their own initiative. Leeway returned to the castle to fetch gunpowder and began planning some fireworks. He paused, though, thinking of friends who might have put on better displays. Gandalf came to mind first. Old as he was, the wizard's fireworks were a spectacle far beyond what Leeway could make. Unfortunately, Gandalf was probably still wandering beyond the Misty Mountains and wouldn't be back in time. Thranduil of the Black Forest, Thorin and the dwarves from Erebor, Bard, the Great Eagles, Bjorn, Radagast the Brown, none of them were likely to make it either. This Founding Day celebration had been decided quickly and without much notice. The only familiar face Leeway thought might possibly attend was Bilbo. He was still mulling over the guest list when, to his surprise, someone rode up to the gate of Roadside Fort. An unexpected visitor had arrived. Chapter 113, Guidance. Achoo! Far on the other side of the Misty Mountains, Gandalf rubbed his nose and pulled his robe tighter. He huddled on a rotting log and warmed himself by the fire. The weather's getting warmer, spring's coming, and yet the ring is still nowhere to be found. Perhaps it really isn't here anymore. This place had already lost its value for investigation. Gandalf rose and glanced east toward the Black Forest, then south toward the end of the mountains. Dol Guldur had only just been cleared, and nothing unusual had been reported since. Should he go to Isengard and take a look? At the thought, Gandalf couldn't help but light his pipe, his face twitching. If he could avoid it, he would rather not see that sharp-tongued white wizard, but nearly all the wisest books were in Isengard's tower. He had little choice. With a long sigh, Gandalf finally chose to head south toward that dark tower. While Gandalf altered his route far away at Roadside Fort, Liwei received an unexpected visitor. "Legolas?" Liwei called at the city gate, surprised. Legolas nodded and bowed. "Greetings, my friend. How have you been?" Liwei returned the bow. "I didn't expect you to come. My father guided me here," Legolas answered simply. Seeing Liwei, Legolas's face showed something like reverence. The battle at the Lonely Mountain had birthed many legends, and most names, Wall Builder, Orc Nemesis, Walking Army, Iron Golem Summoner, were attached to Liwei. "Thranduil," the elf murmured. Liwei responded warmly to the respect. "In that case, come in and look around. You've arrived at an auspicious time," Liwei continued. "We're about to hold a 7-day banquet to celebrate the founding of Roadside Fort. Would you join us?" "A banquet? Of course." Legolas's eyes brightened. As they walked into the town together, Legolas glanced up at the sky as if thinking of home. "Such a commemorative day is perfect for a feast, like our Starlight Feast." "I would be honored to attend," Liwei said. "It's a pity you haven't seen ours. People outside always say elves never light fires to cook, but that's nonsense. At our feasts, you'll see many dishes prepared over large flames. The next Starlight Feast in the Woodland Realm, if you can, Liwei, I hope you will come. Forgive me, though, I may not be there." "If I can, I'll go," Liwei promised. They entered the keep as evening fell. Liwei set out a simple, hearty meal and some fresh fruits and vegetables. Legolas took a bite and was stunned. "That's better than anything like it I've tasted." An elf complimenting a human's cooking carried weight. "If you like it, have more," Liwei said, and couldn't help wondering whether elves ever grew plump. He had met many elves in his travels, and never one out of shape. After dinner, Legolas sat, thoughtful, staring at the table. "What's the matter? You still uneasy about something?" Liwei opened a cask of Dorwinian wine, poured a full glass, and handed it to Legolas. "No, there's nothing to complain about." Legolas took the glass, sniffed the wine appreciatively. Unlike his father Thranduil, that old drunkard, this young prince rarely drank much, but because it came from Liwei and smelled so good, he sipped and soon drained the glass. Liwei refilled it, and perhaps loosened by the wine, Legolas spoke freely. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "I don't really understand what love is, what kinship is, what friendship is. I've tried to find it, in Gundabad, in Erebor, in Long Lake, in Dale, but I can't find the answer." Liwei poured himself a glass and sat opposite. He raised his cup and clinked it lightly with Legolas's. "I don't have much experience either, but if you ask me, love isn't something you find by walking the right road or visiting the right place. It's something you discover inside yourself. Not a sudden flash of understanding, but an accumulation, like a cup you can't see into. From the side you can't tell if it holds wine. Only when it's full and the wine spills over do you suddenly realize that's what it is." "Is that so?" Legolas asked, finishing his cup and falling silent in thought. Liwei smiled awkwardly, tapping the table to keep his hands from fidgeting. Thranduil had directed Legolas here, so he ought to offer some guidance. "If you still don't understand, stay here a while longer," he suggested. "Live among the people. Try to become part of the town. Don't worry, everyone here is kind and welcoming. Listen, feel, think. Perhaps that will help." "I understand." Legolas placed the glass down. "Give me something to do. I will work hard." "I don't know what you prefer or what suits you," Liwei admitted. "Go see the community representative, Veed. New arrivals here are usually assigned through him." Legolas, still restless by nature, left immediately and asked around for the community representative. He found Veed surprisingly easy to locate, planting vegetables in his own backyard, hard at work. "Hello." Legolas bowed politely. "Hello there, young." "Ah, no, you're an elf?" Veed replied, squinting. "You must be older than me. What can I do for you?" "Lord Liwei sent me here. He hoped you could give me some tasks." Veed set down his tools, his face taking on a more serious air. An elf coming by order of the Lord meant something. This one's status was not low. Should he give him something simple? There weren't many difficult jobs in a newly settled fort. Most tasks were straightforward. After a moment's thought, the community representative said, "Please follow me." Veed decided to follow the normal procedure. With a ruler like Li Wei, words were meant exactly as spoken. No hints, no half measures. Best to do the job properly. Chapter 114. Lonely People with Veed's guidance. Legolas discovered he quite enjoyed farming. Moving through rows of corn, stepping on tilled soil, gathering ripe crops and watching them pile up, seeing his efforts take visible form felt good. These crops grew quickly and were easy to harvest, so the results came fast, which was encouraging. There are so many miraculous things, he thought. He had taken off his leather armor, put away his bow and weapons, and changed into simple cloth. Sitting on a small stool by the field, he watched the land and the nearby trees swaying in the breeze, taking his time. The sun warmed him pleasantly. Unlike the typical stillness of elven homes, the people here were always talking, always doing something, full of life. Perhaps that was the nature of shorter-lived races. Time pressed on them, urging them to act before their lives ran out. After harvesting his plot, Legolas wandered through the settlement. Most people were preparing for the Founding Day banquet. Roadside Fort wasn't large, but anywhere with residents was lively. As an elf, he stood out, but the residents were used to surprises. Nothing here shocked them for long. Anything, they would say, could be explained by the Lord. "Is there anything I can help with?" Legolas asked, drawn to the bustle. The man he spoke to blinked in surprise for a moment, then pointed. "We need a few tables over there, and some tableware and cups. Could you fetch some from the warehouse?" "Okay." Legolas nodded and set off. As he worked, the residents noticed a hard-working elf among them. Some spoke to him, and he answered. By the time the banquet officially began, Legolas had blended into the crowd, laughing and chatting. A little girl even stood on tiptoe and pushed a small red flower into his hand. He paused. "Thank you. Does this flower mean something?" he asked. "I don't know," she said, shaking her head. "An iron golem that Lord Li Wei made gave it to me when I first came to Roadside Fort. When I arrived here, I was scared, hungry, and exhausted," she added, serious in such a young face. "The patrolling iron golem gave me this flower, and then I felt safe." "You're very kind," she went on shyly. "I don't want to make you sad." "Sad?" Legolas crouched to stroke her hair. "No, child. I'm not sad at all. I'm very happy. Life here is good. There's always something to do. It's fulfilling." The girl hesitated. "But I always feel like you are very lonely." Legolas smiled softly and looked away, no longer meeting her eyes. He carefully put the flower aside. "I will cherish it," he said. He left the banquet hall and walked toward the castle. Li Wei. I think if kindness had a color, it might be red." "Perhaps," Li Wei answered, distracted. He hadn't noticed what had changed in Legolas, but there seemed to be something good. The first day of the feast felt like the first thaw, ice and snow melting, tender green pushing through the ground. Li Wei walked among the residents, who raised their cups and called blessings to their lord and to Roadside Fort. Oh, heavens! This wine is too strong." One resident choked after downing a glass and went dizzy. Most of the banquet wine had been brewed by Li Wei. Except for the foamy malt beer, the spirits were at least 20% alcohol. Many accustomed to light drinks found themselves reeling, but there were always a few with hearty constitutions. "This tastes a bit harsh," Legolas said after 2 generous glasses of vodka, only remarking, "My fingers are slightly numb." "Is this what being drunk feels like?" he added, expression unchanged. The onlookers were stunned. Were all elves such good drinkers? Li Wei rolled a table and set down 10 barrels of 55% vodka. "Want to drink with me?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. The crowd swelled around them. Legolas glanced around and smiled. "All right." A cheer rose. "Go, elf big brother." A small girl's voice called from behind, and Legolas glanced back to see the same child clenching her tiny fists in encouragement. He nodded and turned back. "To our meeting and to the founding of Roadside Fort," Li Wei called. "To our friendship," Legolas replied, and they drank. The banquet went on. Endless food, endless wine, people calling each other over to taste Li Wei's latest creations, reminiscing and laughing. The residents wandered and scuffled in happy circles, but two sat in the same places through it all, Legolas and Liyue. No one could say how many cups or barrels they drank. In the end, the elf was carried to a guest room and slept soundly. Liyue, astonishingly, remained clear-headed, even drinking several glasses of milk between rounds. Later that night, Liyue sat alone in the great hall when a door opened and Legolas stepped in. Liyue blinked. "You woke up quickly. Want a glass of milk?" "Thank you." Legolas stood before him, already back in his leather armor, bow and dagger at his side. "I plan to leave," he said. "Thank you for everything these past few days. I've understood many things." "Oh? What have you learned? That I'm not the only one in the world who feels lonely." Liyue sat straighter and nodded. Indeed, Legolas finished the milk in a single gulp and felt refreshed. He looked at the empty cup, then at Liyue. A moment passed. Legolas hesitated and simply shook his head, put down the cup, and rose. "It's time to part," he said. Liyue walked with him to the gate and saw him off. "We will meet again," Legolas said before mounting his horse and riding east along the main road. Many days later, a lone figure appeared at the gates of the woodland realm. The guards peered out in surprise and were about to report it when the man stopped them. "Don't tell anyone I've returned," he said quietly. On a different morning in the great hall carved from living rock, Thranduil reached for his carved wooden chair and froze. A small red flower lay on the armrest, a green leaf beside it. He whispered, "Legolas," and lifted the bloom. He stood motionless for a long time, scepter of oak in hand. Over the years, only the turning seasons seemed to stir the Elf King. His crowns and circlets changed with nature, the berries and red leaves of autumn and winter, the woven flowers of spring. This year, with spring's return, the elves noticed a subtle difference in their king. A vivid splash of red had been added to the floral wreath he wore. He seemed somehow altered. Chapter 115, Warm Spring into Summer. "You really should pay more attention to your appearance, Gandalf," Saruman said. "Look at you, dusty and disheveled, like a vagrant by the roadside." In the great hall of Orthanc, Saruman stood near the door and eyed Gandalf with a cool, imperious expression. He didn't bother with a greeting. He only commented on Gandalf's appearance. Gandalf, pipe in mouth, forced an inward sigh. Despite Saruman's tone, he was asking a favor, so Gandalf inclined his head slightly and said politely, "Saruman, I have come seeking help. I hope I may borrow some books from your tower." For a moment there was silence. Saruman remained where he was, regarding the smoke that still curled above Gandalf's head as if in thought. When Gandalf was about to speak again, Saruman finally nodded and replied, "Of course, my friend. You may look through them. Take as long as you like, but put away your pipe. I won't have my books smelling of tobacco." Gandalf smiled wanly. "They're from the Shire. If you like, I can bring you some next time." "Who would be interested?" Saruman cut in. "Mind your own business, Gandalf," came the retort. With a flick of his robe, Saruman turned and left without looking back. Gandalf exhaled, stubbed out his pipe, and made his way to the library. Not long after he had secluded himself among the stacks, a human attendant was summoned to the tower. From that day on, someone began purchasing tobacco in the Shire in noticeably large quantities. "This is really good," the attendant reported. At the banquet hall in Roadside Fort, Bilbo sat back, savoring his cider. "This is better than any I've had," he sighed. "Sweet, refreshing, with a faint fruitiness. After a glass like this, I could eat an entire roast and a whole big cake." Liyue glanced dubiously at Bilbo's round belly. "Are you sure you can manage all that?" he thought. He wondered where the food went. "It's a shame Thorin and his company couldn't make it, and Gandalf has been nowhere to be found," Bilbo added. "I'm the only one from the expedition who could come," Bilbo said, a little wistful. "You may have been the only one from the expedition, but you had other visitors," Liyue reminded him. "Who?" Bilbo asked. "Legolas," Liyue answered. Bilbo brightened. "The Woodland Realm's elven prince?" "Yes, I remember him now. I saw him more than once while I was in the dark forest. I nearly got caught by him." "That must have been exciting," Liyue smiled. "But you won't need to worry about getting into trouble now. They consider you a friend." "That's good," Bilbo said. "Actually, I thought the elves there were quite pleasant, not as serene as Rivendell, but very special." "Indeed," Liyue agreed. The feasts went on day after day, the hall alive with talk and laughter. On the afternoon of the 7th day of March, the residents began clearing the tables and preparing for the next day. After indulgence, life resumed. Bilbo eventually returned to the Shire, and the territory settled back into its usual rhythm. On the first day of the work week, Veed came to show Liwei what he had made, a leather garment. "You have this skill," Liwei said. "Yes, my lord," Veed replied. "I used to be a hunter, roaming the woods. Later I learned leatherworking. Many villagers' boots and the hunters' garments were made by me." The old village chief felt a quiet pride. In the past, he had earned his position through both strength and skill. Now he watched others add useful crafts to their repertoire. "Not bad. You're already a qualified practitioner. Make more for the residents," he encouraged. "I will," Veed said earnestly. March proved busy. Aside from Veed's advancement, the mine tunnel that ran from Roadside Fort out toward the Iron Vein was completed. Liwei fabricated a number of gears and installed them along the track at regular intervals. After testing, he found the mine carts traveled quickly. The trip from Roadside Fort to the ore vein took less than an hour. When the tunnel opened, people grabbed pickaxes, lined up for carts, and rushed to the vein. To Liwei, the ride was dull. Sit, watch the same tunnel pass by, arrive. But for most residents, it was utterly new. Many had never ridden any vehicle. A few had only known jostling horse-drawn wagons. An iron cart that ran smoothly and quickly by itself fascinated them. Some rode simply for the novelty, and the fact that the Lord counted riding as working hours only added to the crowd. "Hey, leave some people for other tasks," the old village chief bellowed, echoing Liwei's thoughts. They adopted a rotation system. Some went to the mine first, others took on other duties and swapped out when it was time. Mineral reserves began to climb rapidly. Liwei also collected ice blocks and made trips to the Nether, gradually finishing the unfinished ice road. Time slipped onward, and as Liwei reached the end of the Nether highway again, spring had warmed into summer. Whoosh! The Hell Gate twisted open, and a figure appeared in a small wooden teleportation hut in River Valley City. It had been some time since his last visit. Liwei sighed and pushed the door open. The wood creaked, and a burst of noise and a warm breeze flooded in. The sudden flood of sights, smells, and sounds made his pupils narrow for an instant. He stepped out of the teleportation hut into bright weather, a busy street, and a lively market. Children raced between stalls, and behind them a broad swath of new buildings rose up, a scene of genuine prosperity. "My lord," someone called. An observant resident had spotted Liwei, and the shout quickly drew attention. People nearby turned, placing a hand over their chests in salute before returning to their business. Liwei nodded in acknowledgement to each of them, then continued on. Chapter 116, Government Merger. What a change. Liwei couldn't help but sigh as he took in the bustling streets. Compared to Roadside Fort, River Valley City had far more people. If there were enough resources and houses, they could become a fully functioning city almost overnight. Merchants lined the markets, guards patrolled the walls, homes were filled with residents, and children ran and played along the roads. This was River Valley City now. Merchants. There were plenty of them. Unlike in Roadside Fort, the residents here had kept their old habits and systems, so wealth circulated more naturally. The lower bound of living standards had been raised significantly, nearly matching what had once been the upper limit. The city still supported those who were less able or less industrious, while rewarding those who worked hard. Bard wasn't the type to cling to wealth and hoard it until it rotted away, nor would he hoard opportunities out of fear others might use them. Only a dragon would do that. Neither Bard nor Liwei, both present at the dragon's fall, had been corrupted by its blood. They were dragon slayers, but not dragons. They didn't mind wealth flowing outward, carefully, not mindlessly. They distributed what was needed so nothing collapsed. "Lord, this is for you." A small child darted up from the roadside and thrust an item into Liwei's hands, a little box wrapped in bright paper. "What's this?" Liwei squatted down, smiling, and patted the child's head. "It's a gift I made," the child announced. "Pull this string, pop, and it opens. You'll see." "All right," Liwei said. "Thank you. I'll open it carefully." The child nodded delightedly and ran back home. Liwei carried the box, asking directions until he found Bard's house. It was modest, an ordinary small home as any other residence. If someone didn't know better, they wouldn't guess the assistant of River Valley City, the dragon-slaying archer Bard, lived there. Don't you have your family hall up on the highest point of town? Why aren't you living there? Li Wei asked as they entered. The hall at the top of town was more like a palace, really. It isn't repaired yet, Bard said. There are still residents without homes. How could I spend time on that big building when people need houses? That can wait until life stabilizes. You could live there if it were fixed, Li Wei persisted. I'm only the assistant of River Valley City, Bard answered. Even if it were finished, you should be the one to live there. My house is fine, Bard added with a shrug. Li Wei chuckled. Bard had talent and virtue, but seemed content to keep his head down. Not that he had no ambition. Before the war, he'd meant to run for mayor of Long Lake Town, but the former mayor had blocked it. Now, with the people around him so capable, Bard seemed content to lie low. If the city had been leaderless, he'd have taken charge, but facing the legend that was Li Wei, he preferred ease. Are you truly content? Li Wei sat by the small hearth and asked. This was your ancestral seat. If smog hadn't come and ruined everything, you'd be the lord of River Valley. And I gave up the inheritance, Bard reminded him. That was your choice. Bard shook his head. Even if I hadn't, what could I have done with a ruin? Better to hand it to someone who can make use of it. You didn't need it, Li Wei said after a moment. But someone, making use of it, that's true. Li Wei thought a moment. Long Lake Town and River Valley City are closely connected. They shouldn't be separate. You want to merge them? Bard said. Good idea. From now on, you'll be the administrator of both places, Li Wei said. Bard blinked. Huh? You'll be the direct manager of the two places. Okay. Bard accepted without fuss. If anyone else had made such a decision offhand, he might have objected, but not Li Wei. Even the old mayor had once managed to sway him with flattering words. He'd grown used to following the right person. So a large administrative change, merging two regions and appointing an administrator, was settled in a few words. Long Lake Town became part of Li Wei's territory, and its residents soon returned to fishing with their slightly odd-looking rods. Aquatic produce would remain that town's specialty. The matter was important, but neither man made a show of it. Li Wei had no personal attachment to land, and Bard was used to handing things over when it served the people. Li Wei held up the little gift box. The chief administrator glanced at it. That thing you're holding, what is it? A gift. A child gave it to me, Li Wei said, shaking the box. Bard smiled. It's a special toy from Long Lake Town. Pull the string and it pops, opens the wrapping in the box. Usually there's candy or a small trinket inside. From the sound, yours is probably. Stop! Li Wei cut him off. Don't spoil it. Let me open it myself. Bard put on an innocent look. Li Wei sighed. It's rare to see someone as calm as you. If everyone valued their homeland more than gold or power, Bard said quietly, the world would be a better place. Thanks to the support of my readers, thank you, thank you. Chapter 117, All Roads. I have a plan. Li Wei extended a finger and looked at Bard. Don't you think the roads around here are a bit too difficult to travel? I think they're fine, Bard replied after thinking. The nearby roads weren't perfect, but it didn't take a whole day to go from Long Lake Town to River Valley City. No one dared to attack, so supply runs and ordinary travel were smooth. Merchants already know River Valley City is being rebuilt. Many have come. They go to Long Lake Town first, then take the relatively flat road up to River Valley City. It's basically unhindered. Li Wei shook his head. I'm not talking about the roads here, though they need repairs too. Oh, I mean, from River Valley City to Roadside Fort. Roadside Fort? Bard frowned. The name sounded odd. Where is that? West of the Misty Mountains. Bard leaned back. That's really far. With all due respect, building a road that long might not be very. Bard cut in, surprised at the hesitation. He realized that such a project would have been impossible before, but with Li Wei's building magic and those miraculous blocks, maybe it could work. Not very easy to do quickly, he finished. Of course it won't be quick. Li Wei examined the small box in his hand. This is a long-term project. Once the cities and towns recover their prosperity, the residents will need new jobs. Indeed, even without waiting for full infrastructure recovery, people were already freed from basic subsistence production. They needed time to absorb changes and new work. Bard shrugged. All right, you're in charge. Then let's plan the initial phase. Li Wei had Bard bring a map, which he spread on the table and pointed to River Valley City. First, we need a flat road from River Valley City to Long Lake Town. That area is fairly safe, so build it on the ground. It's more convenient. That won't be difficult. Bard knew the terrain between the two places and agreed. Li Wei continued. Next, build a short road southwest from Long Lake Town as a buffer. He pointed to the dense forest edge near the Black Forest Mountains. The road up to here is safe. There are elven watchtowers guarding the Black Forest border. I'll place some iron golems too, so there won't be problems. And then here. Li Wei's finger traced another line across the map. From the forest border here, go upwards. No, not north. Bard blinked. But there's already a road north. No. Li Wei took a pen and drew a continuous line. It extended west from the eastern border of the Black Forest, crossed the Anduin Valley, passed over the Misty Mountains, skirted the Troll Forest, and ran straight to Roadside Fort. We'll take the Sky Road. Understanding sank into Bard like a slow, widening shock. The idea was audacious, an elevated, straight road spanning vast wilderness. Finally, his astonishment burst into a grin. Can that really be done? Of course. Li Wei smiled. Haven't you noticed the properties of those blocks since River Valley City's ruins were restored? Bard did remember. The blocks snapped together instantly, their joints seamless, supporting themselves without collapsing. They were easy to transport and assemble. Given enough time, a lot could be built. First, build the ground road. I'll go to the Black Forest. We need the Woodland Realm King's opinion. Li Wei was right. The northern Black Forest was elven territory. Without Thranduil's consent, Li Wei couldn't lay claim or apply his methods there. The project couldn't be rushed. Restoring River Valley City, upgrading Long Lake Town's industry, and expanding Roadside Fort all required time. Li Wei had that luxury for now. After a short discussion, Li Wei opened the box of blocks and began working. He constructed a short stretch of road from River Valley City toward Long Lake Town, then ran to Long Lake Town and built a short stretch heading north along the river, setting obvious start and end points. River Valley City and Long Lake Town were also connected by the river, so in future there would be two parallel routes, land and water. Houses and facilities could be built along the road, expanding both settlements. Perhaps, in time, River Valley City and Long Lake Town would merge into one thriving place. At the city gate, Bard looked at the newly laid, perfectly flat road that had appeared overnight and felt a surge of excitement. Even the ground route was impressive. If Li Wei could really build the Sky Road across the wilderness, what a sight that would be. Good luck on your trip, Bard said quietly, looking toward the Black Forest. May your journey be unimpeded. Unimpeded. Inside the Black Forest, that was an impossibility. Deep under the canopy, swarms of large spiders were converging. At their center, cursed flames flared and died, and chunks of charred flesh occasionally spiraled outward, thudding against trunks or the forest floor. The fire behaved as if it had will, consuming only enemies and leaving the rest untouched. Burning spiders collapsed in heaps without igniting the woods. You really don't know what nemesis means, Li Wei muttered as he swept aside masses of spiders. His hands were numb from slashing. He had only been scraping spiderwebs and a few trapped animals had escaped. Yet the arachnids attacked with murderous hatred. They hissed and surged, shouting in their harsh voices, "You bastard human! You destroyed our road and let our food escape! I'll kill you!" Nemesis, an ethereal, enchanted weapon, glowed in Li Wei's hand, cutting down spider after spider and slicing through their webs. As the corpses piled up and Li Wei showed no sign of fatigue, the spiders realized they had underestimated him. Perhaps they should have let him pass. While Li Wei fought through the tangled threads, someone slipped into the forest from the west. They raced straight toward the Elven King's palace, running hard through the gloom. Chapter 118, Passage to the Fort. Mithrandir, my friend, what brings you to the Woodland Realm? In the great hall of the Woodland Realm's palace, Thranduil descended the steps so he would not have to look up at Gandalf. Nothing major, your majesty. I merely passed by to gather some information. Oh, what do you wish to ask about? Dol Guldur, its recent movements. Gandalf asked plainly at first, then took 2 steps closer and lowered his voice. And Saruman, this is a personal question. Has he been to Dol Guldur lately? Thranduil regarded him for a long moment. No, after the attack on Dol Guldur not long ago, he has not returned. Though the shadow was only recently driven out, the orcs scattered afterward. Nothing remains entrenched there at the moment. If he, or anything else comes, I will inform you. Gandalf nodded with sincere gratitude. Compared with the White Wizard, who took wisdom and gave little in return, anyone with the wit to see would trust this discreet Grey far more. When that topic was closed, Thranduil returned to Gandalf's earlier question. It's rare for you to visit Mithrandir. Why not stay a few days? All right. Gandalf agreed at once, as if he had been waiting a long time to hear those words. Thranduil grew curious. This isn't like you. I thought you'd leave as soon as you'd gathered your information. Is there something in the woodland realm that you care for more? Gandalf's mouth lifted into a faint smile. There is someone, indeed, but he hasn't arrived yet. Hasn't arrived? No, but he should be here soon. Gandalf looked east, his gaze seeming to pass through palace walls and the mountains beyond, resting somewhere deep in the forest. My instinct tells me something important is coming. We will not miss it, Thranduil said with a helpless look. A wizard's tidings always carry the weight of thunder on the horizon. I hope it is not something ill. No, certainly not. My pipe is wagered on it. After a brief exchange, Thranduil waved, and one of his attendants led Gandalf to a guest room. Not long after Gandalf's conversation with the king had ended, deep in the shadowed reaches of the Black Forest, firelight flickered among the trees. Charred limbs and scorched flesh littered the ground. Great swathes of earth were slick with the pulped remains of spiders. Walking across it felt like treading on soft, wet moss. Title acquired, Spider Nemesis. A longsword flashed a cold light in that darkness, its gleam faint but unmistakable, so bright to the orcs that even a glance hurt them. The sight of the blade and its wielder had long since robbed them of courage. Their mere presence now made orcs tremble. This path is far clearer now, Li Wei thought. Once Li Wei had cut through the webs with that sword, the spiders no longer emerged to challenge him. Only after he had been gone for some time, after he had crossed the magic river, did the surviving spiders creep out again, tentatively weaving new webs. Your Majesty, Li Wei has arrived, a guard reported the moment Li Wei reached the palace gate, omitting his full titles and honors for brevity. Quite a few visitors lately, Thranduil observed. Then a thought struck him. Could the matter Gandalf hinted at be Li Wei? He rose and moved toward the entrance. Gandalf, who had been seated on a small tree stump near the door smoking his pipe, also stood. He had been watching for some time. When the gate opened and he saw who it was, he nodded in recognition. Gandalf, Li Wei said, surprised. I didn't expect to see you here. How was your harvest in the Anduin Valley? Not so good. Gandalf put away his pipe and walked beside Li Wei. I suspect that thing is no longer in the river valley, and very likely not at sea either. I think so too, Li Wei replied. And there is something about Saruman, the White Wizard you saw in Rivendell. I recently inspected his high tower and found unusual things. I haven't told anyone yet. Greetings, Li Wei, my ally. How have you been? Thranduil's voice came from a short distance away as he approached. Li Wei bowed slightly and answered, Well, your Majesty, you look in good spirits. Something good must have happened. Indeed, Thranduil said with a smile, and Gandalf added, Forgive me for not noticing before. Your complexion seems much improved since we last met. Li Wei's eyes fell on a small red flower tucked among Thranduil's hair, a detail Gandalf had missed. He offered the remark with warmth. May good things remain. After the brief greetings, the three took a seat at a table. Each seemed to hold back, wanting to speak but hesitant. Li Wei finally broke the silence and spread a map before Thranduil. Gandalf leaned in with interest. I'm planning to build a road from River Valley City to Roadside Fort. Those are my 2 territories, and I want them connected, Li Wei said, pointing to a spot west of the Misty Mountains. The route I have in mind would pass through the northern half of the Black Forest, and that lies within the Woodland Realm's jurisdiction. I came here specifically to discuss this. Thranduil looked over the map and began to consider the best route, thinking also of the old broken road that ran through the forest. The purpose of Li Wei's visit was now clear. Chapter 119, Suspicious White Robe. You mean the road you're planning will cross the Black Forest, right? Yes? All right. Thranduil agreed easily, then added, whether you use our elven path or the Old Forest Road farther south, both are available to you. The Black Forest had two existing routes, the Elven Path and the Old Forest Road. The Elven Path was a narrow trail running from the Woodland Gate straight to the Elven Royal Palace. It once continued all the way to the eastern edge of the forest and allowed passage through to the Lonely Mountain. But the spread of the Long Marshes had submerged the latter half of that road, and it had been abandoned. Only the first stretch, leading to the palace, remained passable. Gandalf, who had not traveled those roads in years, had assumed the farther stretch was still usable, his error in judgment that had led him to suggest Thorin take that route and indirectly contributed to that expedition's capture. The Old Forest Road, by contrast, was an old main road on the southern side of the Black Forest Ranges. Long neglected, it had been overgrown by trees and was frequented by dangerous creatures. It was not particularly safe. Actually, neither road is in great shape. If you need it, I could offer some assistance. Someone volunteering to build a road was certainly welcome. Thranduil's attitude was already clear. He not only permitted the plan, he would send people to help. He was supportive, but he could not guess Li Wei's true intention. No, Li Wei said, shaking his head and indicating the straight line he'd drawn on the map. I won't be using either of those roads. I want to build this one. A new road? Thranduil peered at the map. Crossing the Anduin Valley through the Misty Mountains and, is that the Troll Forest? Is that truly safe? Gandalf asked. He wanted to warn against wasting manpower and resources on something pointless. Of course it's safe. I plan to build it over the treetops, a sky road. When Li Wei explained his vision, both Thranduil and Gandalf frowned. A road above the forest, Thranduil exchanged a meaningful glance with Gandalf, asking with his look if the wizard had known about this plan. Gandalf slowly shook his head. This road will have many ascent and descent points, Li Wei continued. Each will have a carriage ramp for vehicles and a separate path for pedestrians. Gandalf stroked his beard. He wanted to tell Li Wei to go to Lindon and find Círdan, and ask the elves to build a ship to sail to Valinor and petition the Valar. This was not something mortal hands could make. Thranduil also shook his head. This is absurd, he said. By the time such a thing was finished, even the elves might have faded away. Li Wei's expression didn't change. Is it truly impossible? He stood and activated the Wall Builder title. How long do you think it took me to build that wall in Dale? He held up 3 fingers. Less than 3 days. If I hadn't needed to lay the lava layer and set the traps, it would have been even quicker. You mean you're going to build this road yourself? Gandalf asked for Thranduil. Yes, I will certainly be involved. Gandalf's worried frown eased a little. With Li Wei's construction abilities, if he worked tirelessly, the Sky Road might be completed within 10 years. Thranduil listened, stunned. Have you two been drinking from some enchanted spring? He muttered. We're perfectly sober, thank you, Gandalf replied. Thranduil nodded, now sure he was the only reasonably minded one at the table. Li Wei smiled. Your Majesty needn't worry, nor do you need to send help. Leave it to me. Back to the point. I want a road above the forest, one that looks straight at the sun and the moon, following this line. Is that permitted or refused? Thranduil regarded Li Wei, then sighed with a kind of helpless good humor. Why not, my friend? As you wish. He made no intention of arguing further. With Li Wei's reputation, provided he didn't bore through the palace foundations or do something outrageous, Thranduil had no real objections. Then prepare your eyes to see my masterpiece, Li Wei said. I look forward to it, Thranduil replied. Also, since it's rare you two visit together, I've arranged a dinner. We can discuss other matters then. Thranduil turned and walked away. Watching the king's retreating cloak, Li Wei suddenly asked, Do you think he's treating me like a child? Gandalf shrugged. I think so. Li Wei took a breath and let it go. He'd secured the construction permit. The Sky Road would cross more than just the woodland realm. It would also pass through territory the orcs claimed. That was not a problem. If the orcs were defeated, they would have no legal standing to object. Once Thranduil had gone, Gandalf drew closer and lowered his voice. "There's something I ought to tell you about Saruman." "Saruman?" Li Wei tilted his head. "He's the most learned among us. Very clever. I don't want to suspect him without cause, but his recent studies and behavior are worrying." Gandalf glanced about as if to make sure no one eavesdropped. "He's been researching rings. Notes on the forging of rings of power are scattered through his library. Given his station and his craft, some research into rings is not unexpected." Li Wei said, "Yes, but aside from that, he's been looking into strange arts, magic I hardly understand. Some of his notes are cryptic even to me. They give a feeling of—" Gandalf faltered, stopped short. He didn't say the word aloud. "However, none of that is the main reason I suspect him," Gandalf said. "The more important thing is his recent behavior. It's been very strange. When I was searching for useful information in Orthanc, Saruman would often send attendants up to the tower's upper levels. They would leave with orders and come back days later carrying things wrapped tightly in burlap. When I asked what was inside, he reacted like an animal whose tail had been stepped on, very aggressive, saying I had no right to ask and that I had better not pry. Since then, he's locked himself in the upper rooms and barely comes out. Every time I tried to approach, I was ordered to stop. Many times I could only speak to him from outside the door. A few days later, when I went to see him again, he actually kicked me out, accusing me of disturbing his research. What kind of research could there be that I shouldn't know about?" Gandalf shook his head, bewildered. "We're both wizards. Shouldn't our ultimate aims be the same? It's very suspicious." Li Wei frowned and thought, could Saruman already be dabbling in Sauron's dark arts? It felt too soon, and yet something was off. The word that caught Li Wei's attention was magic. To everyone else, he seemed to use magic constantly. He might even be called the most magical person of the age. But Li Wei knew that magic, especially in combat, was his weakness. No matter how strong the armor, it could still be damaged by magic. Many beings in Middle-earth could wield magic. Elf lords, wizards, those with special bloodlines, or lucky encounters. Most were free peoples, and even if they had magic, they didn't use it indiscriminately. Sauron's servants were different. The Nine, the lieutenants of Mordor, and their minions used dark sorcery freely, striking people down, cursing them without restraint. "I'm very interested in that," Li Wei said after Gandalf finished. "I don't think Saruman would refuse a visit from you," Gandalf replied, though his voice held a note of uncertainty. "When do you plan to go?" "I can come with you. If he objects, I'll try to talk to him." Li Wei hesitated for a moment. It might be better if Gandalf didn't come, then said, "Next month, we'll gather in River Valley City and go to Orthanc in Isengard together." "That works. I also want to go to Erebor to check on Thorin and the others. I'll be leaving at the start of next month." With that, the tentative schedule was set. That evening, Li Wei and Gandalf attended a small banquet hosted by Thranduil and drank a great deal of wine, mostly Li Wei's. He had brought 12 barrels of Roadside Fort's homemade vintages in his backpack, 1 barrel of each main type, strong, light, and a few bottles purchased from Dorwinian merchants. Thranduil tasted the wines with obvious pleasure. This is strong," he said, pointing to the heaviest spirit. "It's been a long time since I've had something so potent. The flavor is a little simple, but it certainly hits you." "If you like it, I can bring more next time," Li Wei offered. "Or once the roads are built, our merchant caravan will bring wine here regularly." Thranduil chuckled and didn't accept the bargain outright. "Your merchant caravan?" "Yes, we started it last year. We sell basic goods, leather, silk thread, fresh vegetables, fruit, meat, and now wine. I can guarantee the quality. Nothing defective will be sold." Thranduil's eyes lit up. Those items were basic necessities, already in demand, and the fine wines only added to the appeal. "If your caravan ever reaches near the forest, I would gladly send a detachment to protect it, if only as a gesture of friendship," the king said, gently swirling his goblet. They finished the banquet with more light conversation. Li Wei didn't linger. The next day he left for River Valley City. Gandalf walked south with him for a while, then went on through the forest. By the time Gandalf reached River Valley City, Li Wei had already left and returned to Roadside Fort. "Saruman holds many things I need to prepare for," Li Wei thought. Before confronting him, he had to make preparations. both to prevent the unexpected and to be ready for possible dealings. The Hellgate warped and flickered, and Leeway stepped out at the teleportation point. Veed, who had been tending nearby fields, hurried over to report as soon as he saw the Lord return. During Leeway's absence, more refugees had arrived, about 100 people in all, guided to the city and seeking shelter. The territory could accommodate them, and there were plenty of hands to help settle the new residents. But an awkward problem had emerged. There aren't many houses left, the old village chief said cautiously. We might not be able to take in more people. Actually, another man added, many live in houses that are a bit too big for one person. There's room for more, myself included. I have no relatives, and it seems wasteful for such a good house to stand half empty. A few more people wouldn't be bad. Stop, Leeway said, waving a hand. Why squeeze people together? There are still empty plots. Go and build. Organize those who can build houses. Materials and tools are plentiful. Start a new housing project right away. Build as many as you need. Build extra, if necessary. There was no shortage of land within the territory. If more space was needed, the walls could be extended and the territory expanded. If there wasn't enough flat land, they could level the terrain and reuse it. With the Lord's abilities backing the work, space would not be a problem. I understand, my lord, Veed said. He had overseen such projects many times and quickly spread the news. Those skilled in construction now had another way to use their talents and more livelihood options. People began to discuss plans with neighbors, eager to show the Lord their old craftsmanship. In the village, wasn't the house I built sturdy and practical? Someone boasted. It doesn't let the cold in during winter, and it never gets stuffy in summer. Rain never seeps through. Residents who finished work early gathered in twos and threes in the square, chatting. Although life in the territory offered many routines, once people settled into them, things could feel bland. The Lord's command sparked a new activity and drew everyone's attention. Isn't every house here built like that? Sturdy, durable, draft-free? Another voice pointed out. The would-be braggart deflated. True, with the Lord's magic behind the construction, every house was excellent. Embarrassed, he brightened a little. Then, build them beautifully, he said. If strength was guaranteed, the only thing that mattered was beauty. A demand for aesthetic design blossomed at once. People began to imagine not just practical homes, but handsome ones as well.